Well, greetings and welcome everyone to another edition of the Psych Monologues. I am Dr. Ray Mitsch, your host. Today is October 11th. You're probably wondering what happened. I disappeared. Usually I've been trying to get these out every Monday evening, and it just didn't work last week. So I bailed, simply. And so here I am back, and I hope to get back on the schedule again and be able to do a weekly visit with you. If you're wondering and have never heard of the Psych Monologue, somebody paid you off or bribed you to listen. The Psych Monologues is a podcast exploring the intersection of faith, psychology, and spiritual formation. I have been the host all this time. We've had a variety of guests over the course of the history of the podcast. And it originally came into being as an attempt to initiate and engage the conversation about a variety of topics. At least initially it was all about grief, because that was what I was talking about in classes at the time. And it has expanded to a variety of other topics that are specific to what we are looking at, that intersection of faith and psychology and spiritual formation. So pull up a chair, get comfortable, put your feet up. If you have something to sip on while we're talking, I've got a topic I think that it resonates with me that I wanted to look at and explore a little bit for your time tonight. But before I get into that, I am excited beyond measure, and I'm not one to be very excitable. I am fairly even keel and respond to my circumstances the way they are. But I am excited because the CCU Silent Retreats have been blessed beyond measure and the wildest hopes and dreams that I could ever have, because we are at a point now where we are fully funded, which is amazing. It is nothing short of a miracle that God's people that have heard the call and the need for investing in the next generation of Christians and spiritual formation in Christians have stepped up and provided abundantly beyond all of my expectations, for sure, which is really very, very exciting. I am most excited for all the students that were strapped for cash to be able to afford going to a retreat like this. So it is really, really exciting, and I am humbled and in awe once again at what God has done in providing funding for our retreat. We still need it. We still need to do it. I will mention it at the end of every podcast, our need for ongoing support for it. But for this one, I am just beyond excited about it. I think you probably got that picture. So anyway, that's the big news of the day. And we are moving forward. We're about 2 weeks out. And I can't wait to see what God has for the participants that are part of this retreat. If you want to know more about the retreat, go be sure to hit the website. It's drmitch.com. Look for the drop down for CCU and the silent retreats, and you'll find out even more about it there. And you'll hear some students talk about the impact that it has on them. The thing I want to underline is the overriding emphasis that has slowly grown out of this, that honestly, I was not really looking for it. All I was looking for, or all I was attempting to do, was to attempt to introduce students to some very basic Christian ancient disciplines of silence and solitude. And you might throw in contemplation or prayer or meditation. All of those things are very much embedded in our faith. And it was an attempt to be able to introduce them to it. And we have, over the years, I've been doing this for 12 years. And we probably have a group of about 50, maybe, students who have walked through this experience. And it's been an amazing thing to watch what God does, because it's not your typical retreat. And yes, this is a shameless plug. I'll just say it right out of the gate. But it's not your typical retreat. Most retreats have a workbook and a speaker that talks at you. This is enter into God's presence and hear what he has to say to you. That's all it is. And the time that we spend in community and talking about what we have seen and the things that we have experienced in God's presence is encouraging for everyone to hear. And it's important for everyone to hear, because in a lot of cases what I've seen is that when God speaks to one person, he speaks to many in their experiences. And that's probably, I have come to expect that to happen, the unexpected in God's movement. So that's the exciting news. We will continue on in our plugging along at looking for ongoing support for the silent retreat, but it is nothing short of amazing. So enough of that. This is the question I want to pose to you, and some of it has to do with how you see life. I mean, which do you do? If you were to look across the expanse of a day, which do you do? Spend more of your time seeking happiness or avoiding difficulty and pain in order to increase the happiness? Because this is my assertion that I want to chew on for a little bit of your time tonight, and that is that there is a lot about our relationship with God, our relationship with each other, even our relationship with ourselves, that is built on increasing happiness and diminishing or removing the difficulty, the pain, if you want to put it that way. That sounds more severe than I think it is. It's just discomfort, might be a better way to put it. So which do you do? Do you avoid difficulty and pain? Now, listen, I'm not saying that you go through life being a masochist looking for ways to punish yourself. Well, maybe. Because when you look at our relationship with shame, there's a lot about it that is about self-punishment. Because we honestly think that if I punish myself, then maybe I will stop doing whatever it is I'm punishing myself about. But we don't really expect that to really happen. But we do it anyway. We feel compelled to do it anyway. So what role does happiness have in your spiritual journey? Because like I said a minute ago, my assertion is we are addicted to happiness. As a matter of fact, we define everything in terms of that. And so when things are going well and I'm happy in my relationships and in my relationship with God, then everything's going pretty good. But when something difficult comes in, some discomfort begins to arise, and suddenly I am confronted with, hopefully this isn't life and this continues for the rest of my life. And I can tell you from being a little older, I've been there. I jokingly say I've been there, done that, got the t-shirt and went home. Because aren't we supposed to maximize happiness and minimize discomfort and difficulty? But the problem is we bring that into our relationship even with each other. And so I had this conversation, I've read this in some journals of late, that it seems like moving through life is to make sure that I keep this level of happiness going, and anything that interferes with it becomes an obstacle to what I might be experiencing or what I might actually interpret. Now, there's another aspect to this that I want to bring out, and it's something that I have noticed because I interact with 20-somethings all of my day, maybe late teens when I'm interacting with freshmen. But what is mildly irritating. I don't know how I would describe it. But it seems like we define things by what they aren't. So I say, so how's your day going? And somebody says, well, it isn't bad. It isn't bad. So what is so difficult about saying, my day sucks. I really don't like it. It really is awful. And I'm kind of waiting for it to get a little better here. Or my day is wonderful. I'm enjoying it. It's filled with meaning and purpose. So it's good. It's really good. But it's so often that I hear, and even when I ask somebody about a relationship, and they say, well, they're not bad. What in God's name are we talking about here? It's not bad? And quite honestly, I've had conversations even recently of people that are in abusive relationships, and they say, well, let's take all the bad out of it, and it was really good. Take all the bad out of it, and it's really good. So let's leave all the bad in, and what are we left with? So we end up blurring the bad part of it. And you know what? I have a lurking suspicion, and I know this is going to have you on the edge of your seat. But I have a lurking suspicion, and that is I don't want to admit it's bad or what's going on in a relationship or other things is bad because all paths lead back to me. So if it's bad, then I'm bad and I'm doing something wrong, and there's something going on that always leads back to my blame. And so I define things in terms of what it isn't. It's not bad. And that way, then, I can manage to keep myself intact and keep my happiness in place because it's not bad. If I'm too forward, and some would say even prideful or arrogant, to say, hey, it's going good. It's great. This is enjoyable. I think what people experience, a lot of people do, I may even do, I think I probably do this, is that if I call it good and it's going good, I feel like I'm inviting something bad to happen. See, we live in this universe of what one person I once heard called being in a prison of two ideas. If it's good, then it's not bad. And if it's bad, it's not good. And there's only two categories here to contend with. So there seems to be this lurking fear that if I admit how bad it is, or if I admit how difficult things are, then somehow there's something wrong with me, and I will get corrected. I will be told what to do. I will be told what the truth is I need to engage and embrace. And then I'll feel even worse because I should have known that anyway. And then what's left is just me, alone with me, and I really don't like that conversation. I don't really like the company. Now, the other thing about this is this impacts our relationship with God as well. Because is God, and again, I think we have to contend with two polarities here. One is the facts, the things that we know to be theologically true, and the feelings, the things that we subjectively believe to be true. Because I know God is good. I know He wants good for me. But living a tough life, going through difficult things, things not going real well in a day, what the heck's going on here, God? I mean, what did I do? See what happens? What did I do? Maybe even better yet, what is wrong with me? And so we don't deal with this contrast, this polarity between this, because on the one hand, theologically, we know God is good and perfect and holy and wants good for us. But that's not how we're experiencing life. And how do I sort all of that out? And usually the way I sort it out is moving away from definitive kinds of terms that either good or bad, happy or sad. And I just want to live in the world of happy. I want to live in the world of things going well. And so I'll assert that things are well, even though that may not be consistent with what's going on internal to me. And so we're in this place where we're trying to maximize the happiness. And we do that by our language. I've talked about this before, is that our language is extremely powerful. It's powerful within us. It frames our world. And so therefore then, if I can find a way to maximize happiness, maximize joy, maximize contentedness, and all of those things, and minimize or remove the contrast to those things, which would include, like with joy, sorrow, with happiness, sadness, light and darkness, we have that one. We have contentment and discontentment. Then I'm living in this kind of utopia that's self-created, and then I'm safe. I've got certainty. I've got all the things that I really, really need. But I want to point this out to you just for your food for thought. And that is that if you think about it, we live in a world of contrasts. That joy has its meaning because of the sorrow we experience. Now, it doesn't mean I have to go looking for sorrow, but we all have our fair share. We have our ups and downs. We experience excitement and joy and disappointment and all the things that go with it. But if I minimize the disappointment, if I minimize or remove the sorrow, what am I left with? And I would suggest that what we're left with is a flatness of life. Because with depth comes some of those very things that allows me to enjoy joy even more. Me not shrinking away from the sorrow that's part of disappointment and relationships and my own behavior and my own choices that are disappointing, and even worse, I feel like I am an abject failure and I don't belong to even suck air. And so I don't want to go into those places. I'm sure that if I go into those places, I will never come out. But see, all of that I've been talking about here is all fundamentally built on my self-sufficiency, my ability to do things myself. I don't have to open myself up to trust anyone, including God. I don't have to take any risks. I can just manage it by languaging it into the controlled space that I can experience happiness and joy and contentment and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So by removing the depths, we have removed the depths of our own lives. And this is where there is a chance for courage and trust. And that's the one thing that, ironically, I think we're trying to avoid, is that I like to wax eloquent about trust, about trusting God even. But when the rubber finally meets the road and I am down to it, I will choose control every time. And how that looks is hard to tell. It can come in all sorts of ways, whether that's managing and manipulating people's perceptions of me, or whether that's making sure that I don't feel anything too bad. Because then if I feel anything too bad, then I'm losing control. And when I lose control, I become vulnerable. But we have this chance for courage, and the courage to move into and experience our hearts in real time. And that is a scary, scary proposition. It truly is. And we should never underestimate how difficult that can be. So even when I get to this place in relationships with the people around me that I love, and I want to give my heart away, but I haven't spent enough time there to know what it is or even to own it for myself, where do I go from here? Because my addiction to being happy has removed the depths in terms of my exploration and my ownership of the things that I struggle with. Now, listen, I am not trying to make a case for everybody going around down in the mouth throughout the day and talking about how bad their day is or anything like that. And the irony is if that criticism is popping into your mind, that's the exact point. Is our tendency is to argue from an extreme rather than moving into the reality of what it is. Even the reality of what our lives are, which looks more like a sine wave than a flat line. And a sine wave, as you probably may or may not be familiar, is it goes up and down. It vacillates, it oscillates between not high highs and low lows, but generally positive, negative. And so what is our ultimate trend line in one way or another? So our challenge then becomes, am I going to be addicted? Am I going to be focused solely on maximizing happiness? Or am I going to be focused on maximizing engagement and involvement in my relationship with the people around me, and ultimately even moving into my relationship with God that way? Because for a large part of my spiritual journey, I have majored in knowing and I wouldn't even say minored in experience. Experience was to be distrusted. It wasn't to be used in our way of engaging God at all, my way of engaging God at all. But I had the realization at one point in time when I was asked by a good friend, what would your day look like? What would your behavior look like? How would it be different if you actually believed that you were God's beloved? Not, how would your day be different if you were God's scholar and knew everything about him? Not that I knew all that there was to know about the doctrine of sin or end times or whatever that is. Because the reality is we can hide behind knowledge, and most of us in the Western world believe knowledge fixes everything. But as long as I use knowledge to predict, explain, and control the outcome, I will never really entirely engage life and relationships either. And that's where the fullness of life lives, is living on this ragged edge of being human and living with disappointments without making sweeping conclusions about my life will never get any better, or investing so much in having all the happiness and all the things that I need to know that I am okay, and any threat at all, including people in my life that I care about that bring their crap with them that threatens that same happiness, I'm going to disengage. I don't want any more of that. So where do you go? I mean, where do we go? Where do I go in terms of engaging my relationship with God and other people? And the challenge is moving into that space where the hard stuff show up. And we want to run. Everybody has that tendency. Everybody has that temptation to run away from it because we fear the outcome. As a matter of fact, it's not that we fear the outcome, we predict the outcome. And that keeps us from engaging it at all, which is really where being known exists. It's in this space of uncertainty and trust and a risk and a certain loss of control. And where does that take us, and how do we engage it somehow? So understand this. I'm asking plenty of questions. What may be annoying you by this time is, come on, Mitch, get on with it and answer it. Tell me what I'm supposed to do. Nope, that is not my gig. I don't do that. Because if I tell you what to do, if I tell you how to do these things, then it's just certainty, and you follow the formula and then blame me for it not working. And that's not the point. The question is what is it that you're cultivating in your world? What is it that you're cultivating even in your life, in your heart? Is it trust and the willingness to risk and to find out and to discover about yourself and others? Or is it certainty and control and management and making sure all the pieces stay right where they're supposed to stay and not deviate at all, because then I know I'm safe? And there's no formula to go with that. You look back into the conversations Jesus had with people, and a lot of them came expectantly, but they really didn't know how it was going to turn out. The only person in that relationship who did was Christ. So we engage each other. We even engage God that way, in trust and risk and a willingness to explore and be understood and be known. And that's what I cultivate for the day, not what formula do I apply in order to get this thing that we call happiness. So some thoughts for the evening, just to chew on. If you have any reactions to them, please shoot me an email, give me a comment on the website. I think we're going to get back into being more active in Instagram. So if you want to DM me with a direct message, you can certainly do that as well. I invite all the feedback, all the questions that come out of this conversation. It is somewhat unformed. I want to throw it out there to get the conversation going, and we can have more podcasts about it at a later point in time. If I've touched on something, let me know. Let me know what I've touched on so that I can build upon that as well. So, just to close things up, as I usually do at the end of the program, subscriptions. If you want to subscribe on the website. At the very bottom, there is Keep in Touch. And so you can subscribe there, and all the new content that will be coming out progressively, you will be notified of, and you'll be able to come back to the website and check it out and see what you think about it. So you can subscribe there on the website or on Instagram at the Psych Monologues, on Facebook, ray.mitch, and at LinkedIn, drmitch. You can, any one of those platforms, you can engage the Psych Monologues and me, and we can have a further conversation. As far as the podcast is concerned, you can find it on any of the platforms you consume podcasts. So Spotify, Stitcher, iTunes, Podbean, Amazon Music, iHeartMedia. It's all those places that you normally find your podcast. You can find me there as well. And finally, as I said at the top of the podcast, if you're interested in partnering with what is the CCU Silent Retreats and what is part of the website Out of Ashes, you want to partner with us to continue to develop this scholarship fund so that students in the future can engage these ancient disciplines of silence and solitude, please do so. Go there. There is a donation button at the bottom. It is a tax-deductible gift. We're coming up on the end of the year. It's a great time to be able to fill out your giving, charitable giving, if you'd like to do that. So you can do that on the website at CCU Silent Retreats. By the way, there is a specific URL web address that will take you directly to that, rather than trying to fumble around on the website. And that would be ccusilentretreats.org. That's another address if you want to use that. If you would rather contribute through check, you can send it to make the check out to 1615.tv, and that's the same address, P.O. Box 1777, Castle Rock, Colorado 80104. And that would also be, if you'd like to do that, you certainly are welcome to do so. We have partnered with 1615 TV as our fiscal sponsor, which allows us to offer tax-deductible gifts through your donations, and it would be wonderfully appreciated, as no doubt you will hear from students about their appreciation for making it possible for them to go this fall. We have another one coming up in the spring, in April, so we'll be gearing up to create the funding base for that, and not in relatively short order once we get past this next retreat. I would covet your prayers for the upcoming retreat, for God to move in mighty ways in students' lives and with each other as well in terms of what's coming up. So please put that on your list. Thank you for considering it and partnering with us. And until next time, love ya. Later. Bye.